Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Celebrate Stories Across Generations. I'm Kelly Ferreira, Books for Youth Associate Editor at Booklist, and I use they, she, and he pronouns. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your question into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions and will pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar if we can't get to them. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable them on your screen, please look for and click the Show Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of them at any time by selecting Caption Settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. We have a wonderful event planned for you today, and we'll begin with a brief introduction from each author about their upcoming book. So let's take a moment to meet our panelists. To start, Daniel Nayeri was born in Iran and spent some years as a refugee before immigrating to Oklahoma at age 8 with his family. He's the author of several books for young readers, including Everything Sad is Untrue, a True Story, winner of the Michael L. Prince Award, the Christopher Medal, and the Middle Eastern Book Award, and The Many Assassinations of Samir, the Seller of Dreams, winner of the Newbery Honor Award. He lives in the US with his wife and son. Welcome, Daniel. Please tell us a little bit about A Knot is Not a Tangle.
Thanks. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for being here, everyone. Yeah, my book is called A Knot is Not a Tangle. And it is sort of, I was thinking about the kinds of picture books that I adore. And among them is that category of kind of intergenerational grandparent teaches some craft to a young person, but then also kind of teaches them about life, right? So I'm thinking of things like Thunder Cake or The Keeping Quilt by Patricia Polacco, or even like A New Coat for Anna by Harriet Ziefert. Like, so I'm clearly setting my sights for the top here. And I thought what would be a lovely, art form in my country of Iran. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is the Persian rug, because it is something that the country is known for. Everyone knows Persian rugs are super expensive. And there's a reason for that, because they're meticulously hand woven. And in this case, my grandmother did that. She was a weaver, and my sort of one and only memory of her is her showing me her loom in the basement of our house. And so from there, this sort of kicked off. This is almost an aspirational memory I wish I had, of a day where this young man is, he wakes up at his grandparents' house, and his grandmother tells him that, the rug that they sort of have in the family room has been a bit tattered and sort of wear-worn, and so they're going to weave a new one. And so, of course, you have to assemble the pieces. So they go to Grandpa for his sheep for the wool, and they dye it, and we go through that process of how a Persian rug is made, right? The design, the weaving, all that. Um, but of course, during that time, what we're really talking about is this young man and his kind of desire for perfection. He wants every piece of that to work, but you can't have that level of perfection, the kind of anxious sort that he's looking for, because, well, natural dyes are natural; they're not chemical, and so they are, they're not exact. And neither is even a Persian rug has what is called the Persian flaw, right? And so his grandmother is very gently taking him through this process, and gently kind of letting him know that, our job isn't perfection. It's just to make a knot out of all the tangles of life. And so that's where that lesson comes from. And that's where the title comes from, of course. And so it's sort of that. It's a gentle story, a little boy, and by the end, they get to have tea with Grandpa back from the field, and they've built this incredible rug. Obviously, a giant timeline in the real world and real life has kind of been truncated to this incredible day in the life of these two. And so that is where the book, it beautifully illustrated in watercolor by Vesper Stamper, of course.
Heather, thank you so much, Daniel.
Mhm.
So next, let's meet Jamal Saeed. Jamal is an activist, editor, visual artist and author who spent years as a prisoner of conscience in Syria before fleeing to Canada with his family as refugees in 2016. He continues to raise awareness about Syria's ongoing civil war and humanitarian crisis through his work. This is his first picture book. Jamal lives in Kingston, Ontario. So thank you so much for being here, Jamal. Please tell us a bit about My Sister, the Apple Tree.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Actually, when I was child, my dad was planting uh, an apple orchard, and actually he brought some seedlings, and he wanted to put the seedlings in holes. I jumped in a hole and asked my dad to plant me. He told me that you can't. Why do you want me to plant you? I told him that I need my mom to have apples from my hair. Later, uh, I lived in a small village in Syria. And in that village, actually, we had a lot of trees. It's in a mountain. It's a little bit cold. It's good for apple. Uh, in 2022, I was interviewed in the Ottawa Festival for writers. And then uh, Francis Itani asked me, uh, what did you feel when you departed Syria? Told her that I felt that I'm an old tree that picked out of its soil and moved to another soil, another sun, another everything. Anyway, later somebody, my agent, asked me if I can make this idea a story for children. And I may work with Jordan Scott as a great partner. I started thinking about it, and I found that I have many stories in my village. When I was child, a goat, and I depended on these stories. My sister, the apple tree goes like that. A child find that the goat gave birth to two small goats, and they play with each other. He wanted to play with somebody else, with his brother, with his sister, but when he tried to play with the goats, they refused. He turned back to his family and asked them, why don't you bring me a brother or sister to play with him? They told him that, okay, the day he was born, we planted that apple tree. He said, okay, then it's my sister. They said, yes. And then he dealt with the tree as a sister. During the Civil War, the child, obligated to depart his place, and then he wanted to take his sister with him. And then they moved together with the family to someplace else, and he wanted the apple tree to live in the new environment, and actually it lived. It grew up and with apples, and yeah. So this is the story of the story. Yeah. And actually, what's happened is things went very smoothly. Jordan and I have the same vision, the same poetic vision to build up this story, and we could do that very easily and very smoothly. I think that it's one of the mixture of uh, the my old homeland or my yes, and my new homeland in some way. And it's a way of bringing not only the family of people, the family of trees and soil and sun and clouds, yeah, from the homeland, the first homeland, to the second homeland. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jamal. We'll now hear from Carole Boston Weatherford. So, Carole is a two-time NAACP Image Award winner, an ALA ALSC Children's Literature Legacy Award winner, and the author of Standing in the Need of Prayer, a Coretta Scott King Illustrator Award winner, Unspeakable, The Tulsa Race Massacre, which won the Coretta Scott King Author and Illustrator Awards, a Caldecott Honor, and a Siebert Honor, the Newbery Honor Book Box, Henry Brown Mails Himself to Freedom, Family Feast, which we're talking about today, and many other acclaimed books. She was also named the 2025-2026 Young People's Poet Laureate. Carole was born in Baltimore, where she now resides. We're so glad you're here, Carole. Please tell us about Family Feast.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm glad to be here. Family Feast actually grew out of a poem that I wrote many years ago called Soul Food, which kind of celebrated the foods that my grandmothers prepared when I was growing up. Family Feast is my sixth collaboration with illustrator Frank Morrison, and it depicts a gathering of kinfolk at the grandparents' house for an unspecified occasion. It could be a reunion, a holiday, or a Sunday supper, a birthday. But it's fun. There's lots of food. The relatives have all come from far and wide. The text and illustrations capture not only the cooking, but also the conversation, the cousins, the cross-generational sharing of recipes, stories, and knowledge, and of course, the chaos that also ensues. So it's a celebration of the kinds of gatherings that take place across the country in families of all shapes, sizes, and colors. So it's a joyful book, and it's kind of a recipe for a family feast.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carole. And finally, we will be joined by Charnelle Pinkney Barlow, author and illustrator of Two Artists, Granddad and Me. Charnelle received her BFA in illustration from the University of the Arts, Philadelphia, and her MFA in the Illustration as Visual Essay program from the School of Visual Arts in New York. Charnelle is the author and illustrator of Little Rosetta and the Talking Guitar, and the illustrator of Everything in Its Place, The Real Santa, and Born Ready. Charnelle lives in Indianapolis with her husband. When she's not drawing, she is baking, sewing, or reading with a cup of tea by her side. So tell us about your new book.
Hi, Kelly. I'm so glad to be here. My new book is Two Artists, Granddad and Me. And it is about my time with my granddad, Jerry Pinkney, who I'm sure most of the viewers know, but he was a well-renowned, award-winning children's book illustrator. And so when I was growing up, I would spend a lot of time with him in his art studio. It was always filled with music, tons of books. I mean, it could probably be classified definitely as a library with all the books that he had. And so this book is recounting a day, spending the day with him in his art studio, him showing me uh, books that he's working on, books that I might be interested in, looking at his watercolor paints, spending time drawing together. And it also shows where I got my spark, my love for art and illustration, because I definitely got that from him. And yeah, so it's just really sharing the love and the joy and the inspiration that I found spending time with him in his art studio.
Stellar, thank you so much, Charnelle. I will now invite all of our panelists to turn their cameras on so we can begin our conversation. Perfect. There we go. So, to start, I'd like to ask, What led you each to these specific projects and the desire to write about your family, culture, and familial traditions? Why don't we start with Charnelle? We'll loop back to you.
Okay. So I wanted to tell this story because my granddad passed away a few years ago, and being in a family full of artists, I'm able to see, like the behind the scenes and spending time in their art studios and seeing the proofs and seeing the sketches and the drawings and just, being in that atmosphere. And I wanted to share that small part of my childhood with the world. Because as a reader, you don't always get to see, that behind the scenes. You don't get the atmosphere and the music. And I thought it would be a great way to show how I started looking at myself as an artist as a young kid, and showing that inspiration and that joy that I found with all the behind the scenes stuff. It's really fun.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Jamal if you want to speak a little bit about your inspiration to work on this project.
Actually, I told a part of the story. How did I started this project? But speaking about family and culture, actually, it is a kind of the fabric of myself. If there's a spiritual or social DNA, then it's part of this DNA, not the biological one. This is the first point. The second point, actually, me myself, as I told you, spent my life in a very, very peaceful and green village. And it's beautiful enough to hold it in my heart or in my memoir in different ways. This is, and many times I suppose that somebody is imagining something. Suppose that we imagine that there's a fox clean the clouds by his tail. Then we know the fox and we know the clouds and we know the sky. We imagine something surrealism, but it depends on the real we know. This is what I want to say about holding in the culture, the family, the environment, and actually it appears in this book, in this picture book. My relationship with the apple trees is very strong because I grew up among them. And actually, I didn't choose my name, but my name is a part of my personality. So, uh, all these things, even if I didn't choose them, my mom, my dad, my environment became, as I told you, a component of the fabric, which is I am, which the come is this is me. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Carol, why don't you speak a little bit as well?
When I was growing up, there was always a grandmother in the house. My mother's mother lived with us often, and my father's mother lived just 2 blocks away. And when I got home from school some days, and my brother got home from school, they'd be cooking in the kitchen. So it was like the Pillsbury Bake Off, like every day. And I think they were vying for my dad's attention. And he eventually told my mom that the gas bill was really high because they were cooking so much. And could you get them to stop cooking? But he enjoyed the food. I wanted to evoke the spirits of my Mama Annie, who was my mother's mother, and Mama Boston, who was my father's mother. I had already researched and spotlighted my dad's family in another book, in a middle grade book, Kin Rooted in Hope. So this time I wanted to spotlight my mom's side of the family, and I did so by invoking the names of her nuclear family members. So it's kind of a celebration of the Whitten family, Whitten side of my family.
I love that. And Daniel, if you want to wrap it up. this one.
Well, this is such a well-chosen panel because I think, we've all as artists come to this idea of like keeping the memories of a particular member of our family or a place. And I was doing something very much the same. In some ways I was following Carole there, where more than 10 years ago, I had written the story of my family coming to the United States, and it was called Everything Sad is Untrue. And in it, one of the big features is kind of the one big memory I had of my grandfather. And it's because by happenstance, before we left the country, I had happened to have this memory. And I always mourned that I just didn't have something to really feature my grandmother. And so when I was thinking about what I would do, I was looking, I kind of very naturally came to the one object I have that's hers, which is, I'll show it to you. I brought it. It's this rug that she weaved for me. She was a weaver, and this thing's pretty big, so I'm just going to hold up the corner of it. But I've always had it. I've always treasured it. In fact, this is the most I've pawed it in years. I keep it sort of pretty away from damage or anything like that. But I always treasured it because it's the one thing I have of my grandma. And so I started here, and I wanted to kind of teach, or at least keep that memory of her, and maybe celebrate what she had done with her life, and sort of imagine the making of that particular rug. So that's where it started.
I love that. It feels like each of you have sort of carried a piece of your traditions and your family and really imparted it to your readers. It's great. And to that, I suppose this is a naturalist segue of what does it mean to you to carry your family's stories with you? Why don't we start with Jamal? You are still on mute, Jamal. If you could unmute real quick. No worries. There we
Sorry.
go. You're good.
Thank you. Okay. Uh, Actually, I didn't intend to bring my family inside me. That's happened spontaneously. Yeah. And then they are part of my life. Especially, actually, I have a special dad. For example, he was a farmer, and he thought that the farmer is the most important worker in the world. Why? Because we can live without plastic, but we can't live without food. Yeah, and he think that as a farmer, he was free because he employed himself in his own land. Anyway, uh, the family actually, in the general meaning, the grandpa and grandma and siblings, parents, are the first environment every one of us, or most of us, lived in. And I'm like the others. I lived among them. And actually, the relationship between the members of the family in the Middle East when I was child was so strong. Yeah, they love each other in a, a very, very special way, and they express that every now and then. So, actually, many times when I feel upset or whatever, I survive to the memory, to the how did we dealt with each other, to bring my family and this special relationship between the members of the family, for me, may give some hope, may help some people, I don't know. But the funny thing and the important and the spiritual thing is the trees were part of the family, not only the people, not only the animals, the cows or sheep or goats, also the trees. Yeah. And actually, for me, uh, it's a very, very important experience to bring to the new homeland. I'll tell you something. Suppose my dad uh, had to come to Canada, for example, or to the States. He will be astonished why people grow up the grass and cut it not to feed their cows or their or their goats and cut it to grow it again and cut it again. They have a lot of job for nothing. This is in his mentality. This is a kind of culture. Well, it's important for people here for psychological or it's a kind of beauty, whatever. Yeah. This is why to face to show two cultures who can live together in some way. Thanks.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
great. It's sort of you're carrying your family stories through your culture, your traditions, and sometimes literally a teaser for our audience. The main character of the picture book is literally carrying the apple tree as they depart the country or as they flee the country. So on to our next author, Carol, if you wouldn't mind speaking to what it means to you to carry your family's stories with you.
Yeah, having done some genealogical research for a previous project, I came to understand that the names, dates, and places form the branches and the roots of the family tree. But stories are really the foliage, the leaves that bring the tree to life. So my family stories are really heart songs to me, and those stories move me sometimes in very mystical ways. I draw strength, determination, joy, love, and of course, inspiration from my family stories. They enrich me, and I hope enrich others when I choose to share them.
Stellar. Charnelle, would you like to speak to carrying your family stories?
Sure. So, um, my family is full of storytellers. My grandma, my aunt, my mom, aunties, uncles, like everyone knows how to tell a good story. So from, growing up, stories were the backbone of of our family history, of our culture, and with this story in particular, I wanted to share a story that hasn't been told yet. Um, and also within the story, it's almost like a realization of, I also have my own story to tell. And this was one of them. So it's very important to me to share things that haven't been told and haven't been seen yet.
Awesome. And Daniel, if you want to cap it off.
Sure. Well, these are all great answers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I share them. Obviously, I carry my family stories for deep personal, sentimental reasons, right? Part of the question maybe implies that, like, why would I choose to share this one, right? And I think the best way I could answer that is to say, when you learn English, or when you come to this country and you're learning English or you're learning any language, one of the things you're learning are their idioms, the metaphors that they use to explain really simple thoughts, right? Like, don't count your chickens before they're hatched means don't get ahead of yourself, or, killing two birds with one stone, or it's a piece of cake, right? Why does it's a piece of cake mean that something is easy? Well, cake's not always easy, and certainly in a lot of cultures, their cakes are pretty hard to make, like the Swedes. So why that? And it's like, well, the metaphors that we use as a culture, on some ways, are like agreed upon symbols, and they're beautiful to us. They make sense to us. We can communicate with them, and for me, this idea of perfection, like what do we do with like this desire for perfectionism? What do we do with the flaws that we see in this world, and with the things we make, and sometimes the anxiety of trying to making sort of the great the enemy of the good, I can only explain that using the metaphor of a Persian rug. That's my best explanation. And to share that, to share like a piece of my family idiom, the metaphors that my family would use, is on some ways like an offer to the reader, right? To say, you can use this one too. We'll both have killing two birds with one stone, but now we also both have, this is the Persian flaw. We accept this idea of like not needing perfection in this life. And so it's a bit of an offer, right? It's an offer of a little tool, and that tool is just a way of thinking, a metaphor for this particular thing, and it's served my family and my culture, and I hope it serves other people.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. So the art in each of your works, it reflects the story, obviously, and the traditions conveyed in these stories. For those of you that worked with an illustrator, so Daniel, Carole, and Jamal, how much input and inspiration were you able to provide for the artistic interpretation? And for our author illustrator, Charnelle, how did you decide what best represented the story? Why don't we start with you, Charnelle?
Well, actually, I'll tell you two things. The first thing is uh, painting is an old hobby for me. I started painting when I was 14. The second thing, actually, the art helps the children and maybe make them imagine more how things goes on, the faces of character, the background, and sometimes the talented artist actually help the story and make it more beautiful, not only clearer, but also more beautiful and more attractive and something like that. For me myself, actually, I started, but after Zahra Marwan did everything for the book, and after we admired her work, and after we felt that, we means me and Jordan. After we felt that there's a spirit, not only colors and lines. There's a spirit in the colors and lines, and that spirit goes with our ideas or our poetic vision, which we had in writing that picture book. I'll show you something. A minute. After Zahra finished everything, I painted this one. This is the boy, and this is the apple tree. Yeah. So I felt that Zahra and I actually thinking in the same way of illustration. And I love that so much. Thanks.
That's fantastic. I like that your minds kind of just naturally aligned in the vision of the story. Charnelle, why don't you talk a little bit about your decisions about what best represented the story in the illustrations?
Yes, so um, since I wrote it and illustrated it, it might be hard for some people to believe, but when I'm writing, I cannot think about the illustrations. I can't do it. I have to just write to just like get the story done. And then after that, then I'll start thinking about it separately as like the illustrations and everything. So this text is very poetic and has like a musicality to it and a flow to it. And I wanted that to come through with the illustrations. And also because it is the story of two artists. I wanted it to feel very tactile, like you could just, just reach in and just pick it up. So I decided to use collage, and I used a lot of watercolor washes and stuff as well, because my granddad is the one who introduced me to watercolor. And for a while, that was one of the um, main mediums that I worked in. So I wanted to have that little aspect in there as well. And then also it has a lot of found objects. So all of the paintbrushes and the watercolor palettes and there's like pencil shavings and crayons. All of that is just from my own tools that I use. So I thought that was really interesting to kind of add that aspect in there as well, because you can actually see, what I use every day to make those illustrations.
Wonderful, thank you. Daniel, why don't you go next and tell us about how much input and inspiration you were able to provide to your illustrator?
Sure. Well, input quite a lot, inspiration, I don't know, but Vesper Stamper is one of, I just love her work. And so when she was going to illustrate it, one of the first questions we had for ourselves is how are we going to deal with the fact that she works in watercolor. As you know, watercolor is it's hard to move stuff around in. It's water. It's hard to be precise. And so I sort of asked her, I said, like Persian rugs, I'll show you, like Persian rugs, there's going to be a whole sequence about this, right? Like these are knots that are individual. And a Persian rug is sort of one of its elements of value is sometimes within a 1 by 1 square inch, there's 1,000 knots in a 1 by 1. And so I'm hoping to like show that to the reader. I want to have one little square inch that has 100 knots and then 1,000. And I mean, the most famous ones have 10,000 knots in that smallest space. They're made out of silk thread. I said, so, and of course, as you know, the designs is very pattern heavy. It's very precise. And she said she was going to tackle it. And so I was kind of amazed, to be honest. And there's a great video she has on her Instagram where she shows her doing it. And it is kind of mind boggling how precise she was able to be with watercolor. So that was the first big hurdle. And I think she really cleared it. But the other was the cultural stuff. And so Vesper was really open to just, we had a big Pinterest board and a constant back and forth of, what do Iranian houses look like? Like they're built, Iranian houses have a big outdoor space. We always have like these sort of courtyards where there are trees and a fountain, and half of your life is really outdoors. And so what does that look like? What is it, stone? Where do you put your sandals when you walk in? There were a lot of great videos on YouTube that are just like the countryside life of northern Iran and Azerbaijan. And that was really helpful too, where you can just, she was able to do a ton of research and I could sort of verify for her, yes, this is what that looks like. Because even down to the loom, which is a custom made loom, my grandfather made that loom for her. They're not sort of machine purchased models. They're sometimes made out of tree branches. And so making sure she had a lot of visual reference. She was really kind of an incredible researcher on that front herself. And so yeah, I think I got a chance to be her sounding board, but this is an illustrator's medium. So I also, more than anything, got to back off and let her shine. And, I think she really did.
Awesome. Yeah, folks, when you get a chance to look at A Knot Is Not a Tangle, the amount of detail for watercolor is crazy. It's awesome. And Carol, I know you have an established relationship already with Frank, and so I'm wondering how much input and inspiration, and if your working relationship already kind of came into play as you were working on the illustrations as well.
I almost never talk to my illustrators when they're illustrating the picture book that this in the pipeline, and this was no different. For Family Feast, right, got the manuscript. That was my input. I consider myself an illustrator's author because I think that my text is so evocative that the illustrator can then conjure their own vision for the project. There wasn't a dog in the text. And I did, upon seeing Frank's sketch, ask that he change the breed of the dog. I wanted the dog to be a beagle because we have had four generations of my family have had beagles. So that was the only input that I gave. And I later thanked him and he said, that beagle gave me a hard time too. So um, my first beagle's name was Lucky, and he was a very unlucky beagle. I hope the book will have better luck than my first beagle.
That's fantastic. Love it. Such a wide array of experiences with illustrators or being an illustrator. To Carol's point, so Carol, in your dedication, the African proverb, home is not where we live, it's where we belong. And I'd love if you could each speak to how that phrase, that proverb resonates with your story. Why don't we start with Daniel?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think the for us in Iran, one of the term we use for that kind of idea is sofre. The sofre is the rug that is the family rug that is in the family home where we sit to eat. And Iranians, of course, will sit on a rug to eat. There's a tablecloth still. It's a cloth. It's not on a table. And we all sort of sit on this particular rug. So the family rug is kind of the hearth, so to speak. In the West, we think about that, the hearth, the place where the family sort of gathers and centers. Maybe nowadays we might even think of it as the kitchen table, right? When people talk about, where the family's going to gather for a family talk. For us, it would be it would be the rug. And so in a lot of ways, I think the stories, underpinning metaphor is that these two are building it. In the end, the last shot is, the mom and dad have come home from work and they're all sitting together and having a meal. And so, I think it kind of centers for us around, Persians are obsessed with rugs, I'm telling you. And so I think, that's sort of the most I could say about it.
That's great. The item sort of represents a sense of belonging with your family in the story. Charnelle, why don't you tell us a little bit about how your story resonates with the idea of home is not where we live, it's where we belong?
So I think for me, the way that resonates with my story is that my granddad's studio was not only like a different world in itself, but it was a world where I felt belonging. Like I felt like I was welcome there. It was, a cozy place, a place where I could go and dream and sit and read or interact. And it was a place that welcomed me. So I think that it definitely classifies as, a place of belonging.
Stellar. And Jamal, why don't you speak a little bit to the idea of home is not where we live, it's where we belong?
Actually, I love the phrase, but for me, we are the outcome of the circumstances surrounded us, of the environment surrounded us, and this is a homeland. What's homeland? People, dust, clouds, trees, whatever. And they became familiar because we lived them for a long time. For me, I lived in Syria for 55 years continuously. I didn't get even to Lebanon, which was a few kilometers from my home in Damascus. This is one point. The other point, actually, I feel that the earth, in a specific circumstances, could be a good homeland for people, all people. I'm not a man of borders and names of countries, but it might be just a dream up till now. Anyway, now in Canada, actually, when the lady with a black dog, which comes in front of our house every day, when she is absent, I said, "Where's she?" I didn't spoke with her. She didn't spoke with me, and actually, I think she is about more than 8 years old, but she is something from my neighborhood now. She is something from the environment. Yeah, and everything will leave some effect inside us. The smell of the kitchen, the smell of my mom kitchen different from the smell of the kitchens here. The dishes are different. And the flowers we grow up in front of our houses in Syria are different from the flowers we grow in Canada. But I love them all. All are flowers, all are beautiful. This is actually my own concept of something called home. But at the same time, because I lived 55 years continuously in Syria, my head and my soul and my memoir are full of the Syrian things. not only as the Syrian things, the things of my own village, where I did live, or the things of prison. Where did I live also? Thanks.
Thank you. It really speaks to your experiences, sort of like create the home rather than where you are. That's great. And our great proverb selector, Carol, why don't you round it out?
Yeah, nowadays, families are often scattered, and we sometimes have chosen families where we end up, where we eventually settle. But home is more important now than ever. As Charnelle said, to paraphrase, home is where we're greeted with open arms and open hearts, and home is what opens our minds to humanity. So home is probably more important now than ever. It's where our loved ones reside and where we can always go back. And so that's what home means to me.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, as mentioned a good number of times, your families are well integrated into these stories or the essence of your families. And I'm curious what your families, if they've had the chance to see these stories, what their thoughts are about the depictions of your culture, your familial experience, your multi-generational spaces. Why don't we start with Charnelle?
I don't know what else to say other than excited. They're really excited because it's something that, a lot of us, my cousins and my other family members and stuff, we all have memories of, spending time with my granddad in his art studio and just, the atmosphere and stuff. And yeah, they're really excited to see, the final product and to continue his legacy and to see that ode that I've written for him.
Stellar, thank you. Jamal, what has your family thought of this story that you've shared? You're muted if you want to unmute, no worries. We've still got you muted, Jamal, if you want to unmute, and then if you wouldn't mind
Okay.
starting
I'm
at the
so
beginning.
sorry.
It's all good, no
I for
worries.
Okay, old people forget always. Is that right, Danielle?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Actually, I wonder if they will love it because uh, I tried to uh, to give the readers, all the readers all over the world, the spiritual essence or the spiritual thing we are living in our country or in our own house. I wonder if my siblings and my mom will find that I succeed in doing it, not failed, to show the others who are we and what is the spiritual energy we have and how we have a specific spiritual experience in relationship with the environment or with the our homeland, Carol. Yeah, it's I hope that, but I wonder if I succeed or not. My mom, I afraid of my mom. She is the only one who had a very, very critical eye, and she may say, "Oh, is that everything?" We have a lot of stories, my son. Thank you.
I'm sure she'll definitely enjoy it. It's a beautiful depiction of an apple farm and your family. Carol, I see you have some family members with you, some
I
furry
do,
family.
I do. Gigi, come on, stand up. I have Cara here with me. I'm grandmothering this week. Cara's my granddaughter, 7 years old, and Gigi's the 11-year-old beagle that inspired the beagle in the book. My mother passed away in October of last year, but she did hear the manuscript before passing away, and she was quite proud of the shout outs that I gave to her siblings in the book. So, Gigi, what do you think?
I like it.
Yeah, she likes it.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm sure more of your family will certainly resonate with the experience of a shared meal.
Yeah,
And
and it's quite the depiction of Gigi is quite faithful because to her, to her reality, because she's always begging in the book, and that's her life. So we had to use treats to get her on the sofa.
amazing. We
Okay.
love it.
Thank you, Gigi.
Uh, Thank you, Gigi, indeed. Daniel, why don't you round it out for us
I can't
about
follow Gigi. That is a delightful dog. No, yeah, my family's super excited. And so is my son, who this book is dedicated to. It's sort of very much about, the stories and the lessons we pass. And so it's been delightful.
wonderful? So, thematically, all of these titles share the intent of fostering cultural understanding and highlighting the power of community and family. To sort of round things out, what's at least one thing you hope your readers of any age will take away from your story in regards to this theme? Why don't we start with you, Daniel?
Oh, sure. Well, we kind of live in this something to take away, huh? We kind of live in this space where, I mean, I think the internet does this to us, right? Like we just like rate things for a living all the time, right? Like, everything from the restaurant we went to and books, everything. It's like it's 5 out of 5, it's a 10 out of 10, it's a 7 out of 10. And so I think, you get used to this idea of um I don't know, scoring things, and then you'll get some folks who'll be like, well, I don't give tens. Nothing is a 10. I give everything nines if I like it. And you're like, okay, that's fine too. And um, but it's a world where we just sort of are, I think, really geared toward assessing. And as a result, I think a lot of young people are have a lot of anxiety around that, around the idea of scoring less than perfect scores. Around There's a lot of anxiety around art, which is, I think, such a shame. But this idea of like, and I feel it. If you give me a really nice notebook, and I just recently got a nice notebook, and it was all blank and perfect, and I was like, I spent a couple days wondering what that first mark should be on there because I'm not good. I'm no good at art, but I like it. I want to be good, and the only way I could be good is if I put some pen to paper, but I can't wreck the paper, which is it's a thing people think. And if anything, I would love um for young people to come away with that permission to make something that is just naturally not going to be perfect. In Iran, we have a thing called the Persian flaw, which is every rug that is woven, the weaver goes and intentionally drops one knot out of the rug. And its purpose is to say that there's nothing perfect in this world and nothing should even aspire to be. And so it's just it's a humbling kind of way to go through the world in a good way, the good use of the word humble, but also a way to kind of free you as an artist. And I think a lot of young people, especially, I don't see a lot of well, actually that's not true. I think there are good books on the topic, but I hope this is another good book on the topic of um being free from that perfectionist impulse.
Yeah. Free yourself from the rating system. We love
That's
it.
right. That's right.
Jamal, why don't you speak a little bit of what something that you hope
Okay.
your readers will take away?
Oh, I forget now to mute the speaker.
Oh,
Okay.
it's fine.
Okay. Actually, I'd like the children will like the book and will share me uh, my dreams as a child, playing with the clouds, imagining things in the sky, finding Hollywood in the sky, a lot of movies. This is one point. For the old people or the adults, not only old people, I'd like to awake the children inside them. And it will be great for me if somebody loved the child inside himself who could find something in this book. In general, for all people, from different generations. I hope the readers will find the importance of surviving through love. The boy loves the tree, and this is actually practically was the reason of surviving for both of them, the boy and the tree. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Carol, if you could speak to what you hope readers can take away from your new story.
Stories, I believe, are what make us human. It's really what separates us from the other species in the animal kingdom. Humans pass down stories, and the stories ultimately enrich us. Family stories are just as important as the stories on TV, on the web, at the movies. In fact, family stories and family history are generational wealth. And they're as important, you can't take them to the bank like stock, you can't cash them in like stocks and bonds, but you can't lose them either in the stock market. And finally, I'm going to leave you with another proverb. The house of the heart is never full. And that's an African proverb as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And to round it all out, Charnelle, what is something that you hope your readers will take away from your story?
So I have two small things. So one is that we all have a story to tell. And I hope that that comes through with the art and the illustration, as the character is a young storyteller herself. And then secondly, there's no way to do art wrong. Like you can't do art wrong. And Daniel kind of mentioned this, but so in my story, my granddad gives me a sketchbook. And, my first thought is like, well, I think I'm doing this wrong. And there is no wrong way. So just remember that any mark you make, whether it's a scribble or whatever, there's no wrong way to make art.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. That was just a beautiful conversation. I'm so grateful that you were all able to share your thoughts with us. I am afraid that is all the time we have today. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, a slide presentation, title list, and of course, a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. You can also find out about the latest webinars on our social channels. Visit us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. And of course, Booklist's 2025 Guide to Graphic Novels in Libraries is here. So this year's special issue features articles on how to combat self-censorship, graphic memoirs for teens, readers' advisory tips, cat manga, and so much more. The digital issue is free and open to everyone on the Booklist website, so head over to start reading that now. Again, thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, and a huge, huge, huge thank you to our special guests, Daniel, Jamal, Carol, and Charnelle, and of course, to our sponsor, Random House Children's Books. This concludes today's webinar. We'll see you next time.